Hank, welcome into the Blitz. How you doing, man?
Hey, good morning, Martin. I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing well, doing well. Hey, man, I got to go out to the Mississippi State game, and as we were going off air last week, you said, man, this was a big weekend. I don't know if I've ever seen. I was trying to figure out, was there something else going on the sideline, because it looked like recruits were lined up from one side of the 40 all the way around across the end zone and about to the 25 on the other side, maybe the 30-yard line on the other side, and they were 2-3 deep. Did as many recruits come into town as it appeared from the stands on Saturday?
Yeah, there were a bunch. Obviously, you got your main targets in the 2019 class, the official visitors. There were five of those, guys. Several 2019 unofficial visitors, and then just a lot of underclassmen as well. So, yeah, it was certainly a really big visitors weekend. I think Bama was, trying to take advantage of getting back home for the first time since mid-October when they played Missouri. Just wanted to make it a big deal, and they did. And so I think you'll see that kind of roll in. I don't think the Citadel weekend will be as big. Just, obviously it's not as big of an opponent. I think, guys are kind of heading home for the holidays and looking at that kind of stuff as far as recruits are, and then gearing back up to get back out for the Iron Bowl. So big weekend for Mississippi State, a lot of positive buzz coming out of the weekend. So I think Bama will carry that into the Iron Bowl and then on into December.
All right. Well, coming out of that, who was the guys that Alabama locked down that may have been thinking otherwise, or guys that they may have got their hooks into that they may be able to close the deal on either early signing period or in February?
Yeah, one guy I think that they really, and he wasn't really wavering, but I think it was important to get him back on campus as far as Alabama commitments, was Kevin Harris. He's a jack linebacker from from Grayson High School in Loganville, Georgia. He hadn't actually visited for a game yet this season. He was going to try to come out for the Texas A&M game, couldn't end up making it. He's been saying all the right things. He hasn't taken any of the visits, but he hasn't been on campus since June. So it was nice to get him back on campus and kind of get him feeling all in on Alabama again. Not like I said, not that he ever wasn't, but just to get back in front of the coaches and have a chance to speak with them. And he's a guy that plans to sign early and enroll early. So good look at campus and good to get back with all the recruits and everything in Tuscaloosa for Kevin Harris. As far as other guys, the rest of the commits that were there, I don't think there was much wavering. There's been much wavering. Brandon Turnage was back on campus I feel like he's been to every home game this season already. From Oxford, Mississippi. There's been buzz all year. He's from Oxford. He's going to flip to Ole Miss. He's going to flip somewhere else. And he's just been a really strong commitment in the class. Now, I will say Brandon Turnage is planning to take, or he was at last check, planning to take an official visit to Nebraska this weekend. He plans to take one to Georgia too as well. But all indications have him pretty solid in the class. I don't anticipate him flipping. So him back on campus was a good thing for Bama. As far as the official visitors go, I think it was a great weekend. They had two commitments in Shane Lee and Darian Dalcourt back on campus. Those guys have been locked in with Bama since they committed from day one. They're both signing and enrolling early. I have no concerns about where they stand with Alabama. Ohio State commit Jordan Battle was in town. This was his second visit to Tuscaloosa since A-Day last spring. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot of concern on Ohio State's side as far as kind of where he stands with his commitment there. And I think Bama really impressed him this weekend, so that's one to watch. Beyond that, DeAndre Glass, the four-star running back from Texas, he actually named Bama his leader. So we'll kind of see what happens with that. Bama's still recruiting Trey Sanders really hard, the five-star running back. He's the priority. But we'll see where things stand with DeAndre Glass here in the next few weeks. I mean, he's not signing early, so there's really no rush. But he does say Bama is his leader ahead of Oklahoma State and Ohio State. And so, yeah,
And what position is he?
He's a running back.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Running back, four-star running back out of Katy, Texas.
Okay.
So that was big. And then lastly, Chris Bogle. This is actually really an interesting one to watch, I think, in the next few weeks. He's an edge rusher out of South Florida, four-star edge rusher. There's a lot of talk about Kayvon Thibodeau going to Oregon. He's another jack linebacker target of Alabama's. Then, Nolan Smith is he actually wavering from Georgia? He's going to take a visit. It's kind of hard to see him not ending up with Georgia, but Bama's in that picture as well. But if they don't get either of those two guys, there's Chris Bogle, who they've been recruiting all along. And I actually think things went really, really well for him at Alabama this weekend. I think he probably has a spot in the class now, even with them still recruiting Kayvon Thibodeau and Nolan Smith. I could be wrong on that, but just the way they're recruiting him, the way he's making it sound, it sounds like Bama's really high on him. So he's one to watch. He's going to make a decision at the All-American game in San Antonio in January, and so he'll be another guy to track down this final stretch.
All right. We got Hank South, 247 Sports, Bama Online recruiting analyst. Hank, Pat has a question for you. Pat, you're in with Hank. What's your question?
Hey, good morning, fellas. I know you're going to be busy with basketball. My question for Hank is Ika, I think it's IKA, I'm going to go with his last name. Does he have the potential to be able to replace Quentin Williams and be able to plug and play, or is he going to be a work in progress for the University of Alabama? Thank you, fellas.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah, I think he certainly has that potential. I think, the majority of guys are like, they need to be developed. They need to come in and kind of get adjusted to the college life. I think Siaki Ika, he actually goes by Apu Ika, is one of those guys. I think he probably needs, a little time. But he certainly has flashed the potential. We saw him at the opening, and that's just, the setting of the opening. It's an all-star setting. He just dominated guys. He's huge. He moves really well for his size. I think obviously they might like to shed a little weight from him, but I don't think that'll be any issue once he's at Alabama, if he were to choose Alabama, and to work with him in that regard. But I do think he's a guy that you could put in that conversation of having the chance to replace Quentin Williams, as is Ishmael Sopsher. Two guys Bama's still recruiting very heavily. Would they take them both? I think that remains to be seen. Maybe it's going to be an interesting. It's that time of the year where there's limited spots. There's usually more people that Bama can probably get than more spots than they have. So there's always those tough decisions Alabama has to make. But Siaki Ika is a guy they're very, very high on, and they've recruited really hard. So he'll be on campus prior to the early signing period. And I think Bama, if they do push for him, which sounds like they are, I think they have a good shot to get him.
All right, that's Hank South, 247 Sports, Bama Online recruiting, and it still tickles me that everybody, as famous as Quentin Williams is, I think we mispronounce his name now more than we do Tua Tagovailoa. It's Quentin, not Quentin. Coach Saban still calls him Quentin too. I get tickled by that every time. I'm like, it's Quentin, right? It is Quentin, right?
Call him Q.
That's what I listen. I have all of these guys' names. I told you, like, what is it? King, Mamba, Waba, Mawuka Tuka. I can say King though. But anyway, hey, let's jump over real quick, Hank. Basketball news. Alabama got 3 guys. I think they're kind of 3 interchangeable parts when it comes to the guard position. And of course, Juwan Gary listed as a forward, but I think has ball skills to even play sort of like they've been playing Herb Jones, even as a big guard. What's your initial assessment, as this has Alabama, I think, as a top 15 class, and what's the chances and likelihood if they could get Trent and Walford that they would end up in the top 10?
Yeah, it was a no drama signing day for Alabama.
Right.
It was funny. I talked to all the signees over the weekend and prior to Wednesday, and I asked, when are you signing? We've seen in the years past, or Terrence Ferguson 3 years ago, and he was like, "Oh, I'm fully committed to Alabama, but I'm not signing early." What does that say? But so it was with these guys. They all said each of them said they were going to sign on like Thursday and Friday. They were having ceremonies, but it was funny in the end. They all just signed yesterday, and maybe they'll have ceremonies or parties later this week. But yeah, it was refreshing, and I guess it's good to have a little drama in the recruiting business. It keeps interest up, but in this case, there was none of that with recruiting with this 2019 Alabama basketball class, and yeah, it was a top 15 class. It was number 15. Juwan Gary, 4-star small forward out of Columbia, South Carolina. The Bama went in and kind of just pulled the rug out under from South Carolina and got him to commit in the summer. Jalen Forbes, a 4-star shooting guard from Florence, Mississippi. We've seen Bama, hit Mississippi a lot in basketball recruiting since Avery Johnson's taken over, and Jalen Forbes is another example of that. And then Jalen Shackelford, 4-star shooting guard from California, who really, he kind of exploded onto the scene this summer on the AAU circuit. He didn't really have a lot of huge offers. I mean, there was like Kansas State and some of the lesser or not as well-known names coming after him. And Bama was able to get him on an official visit in September and get him to commit as well. So they all signed. They're all locked in with Alabama. And yeah, like you said, they're all just really talented players, ball skills. I mean, Juwan Gary is listed as a forward, but he can knock down three-pointers. Forbes, he's really athletic, a good three-point shooter, and Jaden Shackelford's a really athletic combo guard as well. So a lot of potential with these three guys, and I think Bama's really excited about what they got in them.
Yeah, and one more question for you when it comes to I was asked the question, so I'll toss it to you. Alabama, of course, the thing that you look at that, there's no recruits with the initials AL in the state code on that, but there's one or two decent players in the state. Is it critical for Alabama to land Wofford or one of the other big recruits out of the state for this class to be a success?
I think regardless of how this finishes, I think this class is a success. That to recruit at the level they have since the staff has been here, I think has been pretty impressive. They've proven their ability to get guys from in-state. Obviously, John Petty, Herb Jones, those guys were big people to pull in. But I think from an optics standpoint, it would look great to get Trendon Wofford. I mean, he's one of the best players in the country, 5-star forward from Mountain Brook, just down the road. Bama, I believe, if I'm thinking right, I think they were the first offer. I think you might have been one of Avery Johnson's first offers when he got to Tuscaloosa over 3 years ago. So just goes to show, how much of a priority, how much work they've done building a relationship with the Watford family and trying to get him to come to Tuscaloosa. And he's taking official visits. He's not going to decide until the late signing period. So there's a lot of time. Time is on Alabama's side here. There's been a lot of buzz about Memphis and Penny Hardaway being there and Mike Miller, the assistant, with him as far as having an edge. But, Bama's kind of stuck with it. They're right in the thick of things. I think he's coming on an official visit in early January. So they'll get to be on campus, be at a game most likely, and kind of just continue to build that relationship with the staff. And, I think Bama's, they're in it. I think it would be, I don't think it's like a make or break type thing if they don't get him, but I mean, that would be huge to get him to commit in this class and add to the core of guys they already have signed.
All right, that is Bama Online recruiting analyst and 247 Sports recruiting analyst Hank South. You can find them at Hank South 247 on a Twitter handle. Hank, what do you guys have coming up for our listeners?
Yeah, another visitors weekend in town. Like I said, it's probably not going to be as big as Mississippi State, or especially not as big as the Iron Bowl next week, but probably some news to follow, I'm sure. We're still kind of getting some reaction from visitors over the weekend. There was a bunch of them, so usually it kind of trickles down through the week. So we'll have some more updates on that, and then obviously it's a good time to sign up with the Iron Bowl next week, and then the SEC Championship after that. So you can follow us along on BamaOnline.com. We're doing a free 7-day trial right now. If you give that a shot, I don't think you'll be disappointed. And you can follow me on Twitter at HankSouth247.
All right. Thanks, Hank. We'll catch up with you next week. Of course, it'll be Iron Bowl week, and I'm sure that you're working on getting a lot of interviews and things coming up with those who will be in town for the Iron Bowl here in Tuscaloosa. So we'll talk with you about that. Remember, you can follow him, and he tweets out all his articles at HankSouth247. Thanks, Hank. We'll catch up with you next week. Bye-bye.